Okay, so last night, um, during my tutoring hours, there were some questions about rendering and just some questions about like getting the form of the chair that you all are making. So I want to make two short videos on how to do that just really quickly. There's a couple ways that you could like start with the chair. I'll just show you the way that I thought of off the top of my head. I don't have the reference in front of me, but you have it with you. So the chair is, the back is connected to the arms. So if we extrude all the faces like this, up to get arms connected to the back, and then select these three back faces, kind of get something that's starting to resemble the chair that you all are working on. Now this is only one way to do it. There's other ways you could do it. You could, this is a more complicated way. Select these faces and extrude these up. Select these faces and delete them. This is the way I was doing it last night because I just couldn't think of another way off the top of my head. And you bridge these holes, and then you extrude these up. This is just a more complicated version of what I just did. So there's another way to do it as well. That's all I can think of in regards to just ways to make the base of a chair. A big part of getting the shape you want is adding more edge loops to add more restrictions, because these vertices right here are inherently going to move what's attached to them. So this face, this face, this face, this edge, this edge, this edge. So if I don't want this area of influence to leave around this vertice or this vertex, I'm gonna add some edge loops around it. So if I want to make this a little softer, I can do that by doing this. So now the area of influence of these vertices, the things that it's affecting, isn't all the way to the end of the chair. It's only to this edge loop right here. Another way you could do this, I don't know if he's gone over beveling yet. If not, you can just ignore this. If you go to your modeling toolkit, you can press bevel. You can affect the fraction. Unfortunately, this leaves you with n-gons, which is something you would need to fix, right? You can't have this five-sided polygon right here. So I wouldn't suggest doing it like this. For those of you interested in being modelers, you could use the multi-cut tool in the modeling toolkit. It's also in the shift right click menu, and you're gonna hold control and you're gonna cut a partial edge loop. You can also just insert an edge loop, but edge loops don't continue on n-gons. They only continue on quads. And then you can cut your own full edge loop. See, I wouldn't recommend doing this. There's a lot of steps, and it's like pretty ugly. It just takes a lot longer, especially for like where you're at right now, learning how to model. Like, it worked, but it looks rough. So making soft parts like that is it's all about where you place your edge loops and how you affect your edge flow. So this clearly needs to be softer. I can put an edge loop there, I can drag this down, I can drag this down, and now the corner of my chair is a little softer. I need my chair to have a divot in it. I can do something like this. I can add some edge loops to the middle, again, just so I'm limiting the area of influence that these vertices have. I can pull these down. You can use soft select if you want. I haven't found this to help a ton. Maybe in 3-view, no. You can drag these down, and you can select these, and then hold shift, and also mark these, and drag these down to give you a rounder chair. And you can do the same thing on top. You can go into your orthographic top view. This is my top view. Where am I? Where's this? Oh, okay. You can take these vertices and move them back a little bit. See, the problem is you get all the vertices. So if you have this menu up, you can deselect those, so you can just pull these back. Kind of gives you the curve of a chair. Just a thought. A question I had last night as well. Man, this video is way too long. I'm gonna have to like upload this to YouTube or something. Another question I had last night: how do I get the imprint on the chair? There's a couple ways you could do it. There isn't like one right way, but if I had to guess what they're trying to get across in teaching this is using tools you've already learned before. So if you need to get some rounder shapes in the bottom of a chair, it's almost like we learned how to make circles for the dice project. I'm just doing some quick edge work really quickly, just so this isn't ugly when I 3-view it. Since I'm uploading this to YouTube instead, since it's too long, I'll just put rendering and this modeling thing in there as well. So forgive the YouTube video. And is it smooth? It is, but it's still ugly. You have to make sure you fence all your corners, or you'll get some really awful pinching and like bad edge flow like this. And I'm missing one more, but I don't know where it is. Right here. So I'm getting it all sides. I'm getting a really crisp edge. Again, I'm missing one right here. I think that's right. Nope. I can still see some pinching here. I'm missing this one. Okay. Now we have a nice fenced cube with relatively neat topology. There are different ways to do this, but this is the way you all know, so this is the way I'm going to do it right now. There's a couple things you can do to make these divots. Let me see. So I'm going to show you two ways. One's a little more complicated and uses tools that you may not be very familiar with, and one is a simpler way that you probably are familiar with. I'm going to add some edge loops right here, and I'm going to add one to the middle. Adding this one to the middle is going to cause the area of these faces that I'm manipulating to not be as great. I'm also going to adjust these faces right here, which hopefully doesn't affect my... Okay, it looks like... Yeah, it looks fine. So this is one way that I could think of doing it. There's a million ways you could do this, and none of them are wrong. Some of them are just easier. So if I insert another edge loop right here, I'm kind of getting a shape that resembles a pip on a dice, which you could pull this up and pull this out right here. Now I kind of have a roundish shape that resembles the curvature of a chair. And there are a couple ways I could do this. If I just pull it down into the chair, it's subtle, but I'm getting that curvature into the chair. But you'll notice it's pulling down the vertices really close to the edge. Just add another edge loop. So you're telling Maya to not go past this edge loop whenever you're manipulating these faces. Pull this down, pull this in a little bit, and you're getting that kind of feeling of the chair. I don't have the reference pulled up in front of me. If the edges are softer, just move your edge loops away from the edge, or delete one. It'll make the edge softer. If you need them sharper, add another one. The more edge loops, the sharper your quarters are going to be. It only takes about 2 normally, or 1 if it's really close. But this is how you can get a bit of a divot in your chair. You can get that divot. It's all about using tools that you already know how to use to achieve an effect that you don't know how to make yet. It's just building up a small library of ways you could do things. Another way you could do it, if I smash my undo key until this goes back to the way it was. Is this flat? Yeah. Another way you could do it, I guess, I don't think it's slightly more complicated. It's just a different way you could do it. I'm going to clone this. I just hold shift and move it, and it duplicates the object. I'm going to delete all these extra edge loops and just act like I have a normal cube that I haven't touched before. If I can navigate this software. Yep, and if you're deleting edge loops, I'm sure they've gone over this, but just for reiteration, see, I did it right here. If you just press delete, you're gonna have a bunch of random verts, which is infuriating, and makes your topology horrendously ugly. And you can just highlight those verts, and you can't delete them with. Well, I guess you can delete them with delete, but if you just hold control when deleting your edge loops, it deletes the verts as well. So let me clean this up for a slightly different workflow to make this chair. This particular the base of this chair is what somebody was having trouble with last night. If you select, don't worry about what's happening to this. If you select all these edges, you have every edge selected. You can deselect the edges on the major faces. So on the flat sides, like these, you just want anything that's an edge. Nothing on faces. And then this is the slightly advanced way to do it. You can click bevel, and it will create kind of edge looping for you, almost. If you hold control and drag fraction, it will decrease or increase the size of your bevel, which can give you some interesting shapes. But for this, I would make the fraction relatively small and then add one segment. So you're getting this really clean edge flow. Something I don't have because I have. See this? Big, fat ingon. Also, I've somehow managed to give myself non-manifold geometry. that I'm not sure where it is. Again, it's fine. The concept is still the same. Maya doesn't like it because I have a face somewhere that's breaking the laws of physics. Maya doesn't like this because these are huge in guns. There's 2 right here. So there's 4 faces right here, 4, 4, 4. And then there's 2 extra faces right here, 2 and 2. I wouldn't do this. You probably don't know enough about Maya to be able to fix a problem like this. If a professor sees this, it's just not going to be a good day because it's a huge in gun, and it makes the topology awful and not unusable, but basically unusable. So I wouldn't recommend beveling until you know a little bit more about Maya and its tools it has to offer. So let me see. I'm going to set up a quick render scene. I'm going to model something with some decent like edges that catch light really quickly. Yeah, so I just took about like a minute to make something with like just some interesting pieces and parts that can catch light. Not important what it is. It's just important how we're going to render it. So there's a couple ways you could do this. The classic freshman render is plane, huge plane. This is your shot. Nope. This is your render shot. I would not recommend this. There's a plethora of things wrong with it. Probably the most severe is being able to see your void. Also, wow, this is way taller than I thought I made it. Make this a little shorter. The plane doesn't add much. Now, the background doesn't need to add anything per se. However, it doesn't help. So, one way you can do it, there's a couple different things you can do. Now, this isn't the perfect way to render, but for what limited knowledge you have about Maya right now, this is an easy way to set up just a classic studio lighting. We're not going to go over lights because that's a whole beast and it takes like a long time to set up like pristine lighting. But we're just going to do a really simple sky dome lighting. So I'm going to select all of these faces except for the back and the bottom. I'm going to delete all these faces. So you say, Grayson, what the heck? Now you have the inside of the cube, the black that Maya doesn't want you to see is on the inside, and the gray that you do want to see is on the outside. I agree. That's not how it should look. You're going to select your faces. It always selects both sides of the face, because faces don't have 2 sides unless you give them thickness. This doesn't have thickness. It's almost like perceived thickness, because it will always select both sides of the face. So we want to turn this inside out. If you go to display, because if we're manipulating how we're seeing the mesh and how it's displayed, and you go down 3 options, you're going to see reverse. And you're going to click that. And it's going to bring the gray on the outside to the inside and the black on the inside to the outside. I think there's other ways you can do this. I'm not going to get into it because I can't remember. But it's in mesh display reverse. That's how I do it. So we're going to drag this out. We're going to select this edge. I'm going to pull this out towards us. Select this edge, pull it up. I'm actually going to pull this edge out a little bit because we need quite a bit of room. So now we have a small, incomplete studio lighting scene. So now if I render this, I'm going to throw a sky dome in because it's the easiest way to get just light in your scene. Just to note a couple things wrong with what's happening right now. There's a ton of noise. My model isn't centered. It's not complementary to what I've made, and I can see the line in the background. It's also kind of dark and muddy. So, a couple things you can do. I'm going to keep this very simple because I might be talking about things you haven't talked about yet. But these are not hard as long as you just follow these instructions pretty closely. I wouldn't copy what I'm doing. However, use these tools in your own project because you got to learn how to do this eventually. Especially for the projects you're going to be doing in the future. So, we want this to be an endless horizon. We don't want the viewer to be able to see where our background stops, which is the whole point of studio lighting. It has that curved white wall. So, a couple things we can do. I'm going to click on the edge. We're going to get this edge, so the middle edge, and we're going to bevel that edge. Now, I know I said beveling isn't great before for where you're at, but since all it's doing at base level is splitting this into two pieces, if we reduce that fraction and add one segment and smooth it into 3 view, and we're careful about our model not being inside of our floor, it's definitely something to be weary of because it's ugly and it breaks the immersion of your render. Now, I suddenly have a background that looks like studio lighting. If you have a really good camera angle you want to render this in, you could press View. You could go to Bookmarks. So in your main viewport, you're going to click in the top left. This isn't necessary, by the way. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to do this. This is just a helpful little tidbit for rendering. So main viewport, View, Edit Bookmarks, New Bookmark. Now what this did is you told Maya, remember the exact position my camera's in right now. So let's say I need to go behind here and I needed to tweak where my model is. So make it a little bigger maybe, pull it up. Okay, now I'm done working, but I lost my good camera angle. Go back to View, go to Bookmarks, and then click the bookmark you made, and it'll bring your camera back to where it was when you liked that position. Helpful little tool, however, far from necessary. Whenever I'm rendering, I like to click these 2 buttons. We have a resolution gate and film gate. Just use this resolution gate. It will show you exactly what your camera is going to be rendering, because this is not what your camera is rendering. This is just the perspective default camera. This resolution gate, this rectangle with a blue circle in the middle, this is what your camera will be seeing. So we can try to make this a little better, center it, rotate it a little bit, show that I have some decent, I have some cool stuff going on. Pull this down. I really don't. I'm trying to like make it parallel to the floor. You can adjust this this edge if you want to like try to make the floor a little bit more flat. Not necessary. Ooh, man. Yikes. So now I have a slightly more compelling angle, a slightly more compelling background. Now we can adjust our lighting. So if you go into your attribute editor, if you go to your outliner rather, you can select your dome light, and then you can go to your attribute editor with a bunch of adjustments just for this dome light. I'm going to let's mess around with raising the intensity a little bit. Not drastically, just because I don't want to blow out the scene. We can try to render that. Compared to what we had before, it's already feeling better. The rough part is Maya's default texture sucks. I mean, it's fine in the viewport for working on, obviously, but like generally speaking, it's really not good. So we're gonna add our own, and we're gonna make this render leagues better. Again, not necessary, but it will be something that can give you some like improved points on your future projects. It's also just expected. You're just expected to have good renders in the future and even now, so this will just help you generally speaking. So right now we're in the hyper shader. I know it looks like a lot, but for what we're doing right now, it's very straightforward. We're going to go to this search bar and type AI, like artificial intelligence, and then standard surface. You don't have to type the whole thing, it will autocomplete. I just wanted to type the whole thing out so you know exactly what it's called. AI standard surface, and you're going to select it. So now, don't worry about this viewport. This is for texturing and things like that. You have your AI standard surface. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to rename this to model. So this, in this case, is what my model is going to be textured with. I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to name this one background. So this is going to be my texture or my material for my background, and this is going to be the texture or material of my model. So what I like to do, I like to make it a little darker because white is kind of harsh. I make it a slightly darker gray, and then I make the background an even darker gray because you want your model to pop. So if we compare these two grays, that's probably good. And we can always tweak. It's not a big deal. So you can close Hypershader. You're done in there. Now you can select your object, and you're going to right click and hold, and you get this menu where you can, edge object mode that you guys use regularly. But you go to the bottom, make sure you keep holding, go to the bottom, and you say assign existing material for the two materials we just created in a hypershader. So you're going to go, so I have my model selected, so holding right click, I'm going to go to model and release right click. And it looks like it got darker, but that's just because like AI standard surface in my viewport looks, it doesn't exactly reflect what this material looks like. I'm going to do the same thing with my background. Hold right click to the bottom, continue holding right click to go over to background and release on background. So now my whole scene looks darker. Well, if we render it again, we get way more compelling colors. Now, it's clearly not perfect, obviously, and I'm still getting a bit of a horizon right here. That's partly because of the sky dome. There are things you can do to fix that. I'm try to drag this out a little more, just so it's not as harsh. Try to drag this up a little more, just to give it a little bit more roundness. But our render is starting to look a lot better. Things to note about this render. Let's see here in 1 second. Okay, so see, you actually get a nice little reflection. which grounds it in reality. Notes. So much noise. These speckles, this grossness is Maya's settings not being high enough. So Maya's default settings, Maya's default renderer is not good. Arnold is a renderer they give us permission to use. So if we go to the top and we click this button, these are our render settings. You want to make sure you're using the Arnold renderer. Super important. The rest of these suck. They have their niche uses, but I just wouldn't do that. Right now, I'm just going to do test renders because this video is already 30 minutes long, and I've rambled enough. I'm just going to do 540 renders. Please do HD 1080 renders. Please. I'm speaking from experience. Please do HD 1080 renders. We're going to go up to, there's common, Arnold renderer. This is where you can adjust the settings that Arnold will use. So ambient, this is like the whole camera. If you turn this up, it turns all of these up. Right now, the problem we're having is light isn't diffusing enough. So what we want the camera to do is diffuse the light more so it's softer. So I'm going to turn my diffuse up to 4. Now be super duper careful messing with these settings. If you turn them up too high, it could take like 4 hours to render one frame. Lucky for me, my computer's strong enough to handle it. So, and like for sake of just presentation, it will be relatively quick. But man, look how much better that's looking than it was 10 minutes ago. We have obviously a couple more tweaks that could be made, and I will talk about those briefly. My resolution is very low, obviously. There is so my picture is very small. The background could stand to be a little darker. And for base level render, that's kind of all there is. So I'm going to adjust the material that's on my background. I'm going to go over to my attribute editor after selecting on my background. These are all the attributes that are on my background. I'm going to scroll to the very end because the list is short. This is my AI standard surface that I created in the Hypershader. I'm going to bring this color down just a little bit. And I'm going to adjust my sky dome to be a little bit less intense, maybe 1.3. Let's see if that's feeling any better when we render it. Yeah, look at that. Look at the difference that made. The background's a little darker. You can see all the edges on my model. The lighting's not as harsh. There's obviously things we could do to improve this render, but for a couple render passes, that's infinitely better than it was 10 minutes ago. It's centered. It's the angle is complementary. It's not noisy. The materials aren't flat. It has some depth. There's a slight reflection in the floor, which isn't necessary, but it's nice. You don't have a harsh background line. So if I wanted to maybe make it a little softer, I could add another segment. We could see if that does anything to get rid of that horizon line. We're really trying to make it as round as we can. And this is probably because it's a sky dome. It's not atrocious, right? It's not like, oh my gosh, this is going to ruin your render if there's like a line in the back. If you can get rid of it, please do. But if you can't, it's not the end of the world. But I would recommend making an attempt to make this seamless. Make this look like there isn't a horizon back here. that's pretty much all I have. That's my, I say quick, but it's a 35-minute video. The last half is rendering, the first half is modeling. Those are my tips on making your models look better. I will, if anybody needs help, send them to our Discord and we will help them. I don't care to record videos like this. I literally, I do this all the time, every day. Not in Maya, but I model all the time, every day. It's literally what I do all the time. So I don't mind to take 20, 30 minutes to help someone who needs some help. So that's all I have. If you have questions, please post them in the Discord. Message us. We will help you. Marty Fitzgerald will help you. Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks, guys.